Good morning, everyone. Good afternoon, good evening, depending upon where you are in the world. We are now in Ontario, Canada, near Toronto. This is Voice of Men 360 Author Circle. Before I start, I'd just like to share a few things. We have a special guest today, Dr. Kamran Ahmad from Pakistan. I'll be giving you some more information about him shortly, but let me tell you a little bit about us. My name is Joe Groh. I'm founder of Mastermind Group and host of Author Circle. We meet every third Saturday of the month from 11 to 12. I'm also peer support coordinator of Voice of Men 360. It's a meeting for men by men. Voice of Men 360 is a nonprofit organization founded in 2020 based in Toronto, Ontario, Canada. Voice of Men 360 was born out of seeing a tremendous need and stepping up to provide services to help support and overcome men and boys' life challenges. We're part of International Men's Day. International Men's Day has been serving for over 21 years, and so far 90 countries around the world joined together in doing various activities regularly. International Men's Day follows 6 pillars, which is the overall well-being of boys and men. We follow in the same footsteps. And by the way, we'll be celebrating it very shortly. In November 19th is the actual day. We have a lot of events happening through that. So please look to see if you feel you can get involved, interact, or know someone you could recommend. Voice of Men 360 wants to recognize and appreciate the individuals who have been contributing to the area of boys and men's issues through the writings. Participants around the world will be joining and sharing their contributions and experiences. The show runs on the third Saturday every month from 11 to 12. And before I introduce our special guest, I'd like to go through a disclaimer. We'd like to remind you of Voice of Men 360's mission is always delivered with good faith toward peaceful harmony. The views and opinions expressed in today's episode are those of our speakers and do not necessarily represent Voice of Men 360. And our organizing engages in various discussions to offer inspiration, creative awareness, and the issues of men who wish to overcome their life challenges. We're not providing medical or therapeutic advice. Should you require that type of assistance, we recommend you contact a medical professional immediately. If you have questions or concerns about today's episode or any Voice of Men 360 content, please email us info@voiceofmen360.org. And today's guest is Dr. Kamran Ahmad. Is he there? Okay. Well, I'll tell you a little bit about him while we're waiting for him to come on. He wrote a fascinating book, and there's the cover of it, Between Saints and Sinners. And it's an amazing book. It's Understanding Men, the Traps and Triumphs of Treading Life as a Man. And what I found quite fascinating about it is he basically discusses personal experiences and stories, and his focus is very deep with a passion on the male roles in various parts of the world. His gender studies are very enlightening, worthy of cherishing for men, and essential for women to understand men. And he's worked in areas of mental health since 1991. There he is. Welcome. How's everything going there in Pakistan? We're a different time zone. We're happy you're here.
Excellent. Glad to be here, Joe.
Yes. So let me just tell you a little bit more about Dr. Kamran Ahmad. He's been involved in mental health since 1991, started individual therapy groups and the men's programs at Battered Women's Alternative in California. His experiences range from providing therapy to training to managing mental health within an organization. He's worked 18 years as staff counselor in the United Nations. He also held heading the staff counseling unit, the World Food Program, based on headquarters in Rome, 8,000 plus staff in over 80 countries. He's also worked extensively with gender issues and youth issues, in addition to broader human rights and religious tolerance and diversity concerns. He's also served as executive in the board and chairing the board of organization providing services in many areas. His management covers businesses in addition to nonprofits and humanitarian organizations. He currently owns and manages a resort on the southern coast of Sri Lanka, and a country he definitely fell in love with. In addition to extensive training experience, he's taught the university level as well, included 4 years of teaching psychology in the National Institute of Psychology at the Quaid-i-Azam University in Islamabad, and teaching Sufism at the John F. Kennedy University in California. He's written other books in regard to spirituality, to gender, to broader issues of inclusism inclusion, trying to say that properly, inclusion and diversity. In addition, he's produced videos from professional, very personal talks on these topics. There's many more. There's a long page here. I'd be here all day just reading it. And welcome on the stage here to our show, Author Circle.
Excellent. Glad to be here. Thanks. Thanks, Joe.
We're going to be discussing the book. The first half, we'll be talking about different issues that Dr. Kamran has discovered. In the second half, we'll talk about solutions. But at one point, I want to bring up in chapter 6, you talked about, it's only now towards the evening of my own life that I realize there are many different kinds of heroes. These are the flashy and glitzy Marvel heroes that I looked up to in my youth. But there are the silent and discreet heroes who sacrifice so much of what they like to do, of what they wanted to do for the sake of others they loved. They did not live out all their dreams so that those they loved could realize theirs. It is their quiet sacrifice day after day, year after year, that turns them into heroes who have the courage and devotion to live their lives for others. I had to read that because I love that, talking about sacrifice for the sake of others they loved. So I thought that's amazing. So I'd love to jump in and see what motivated you to write this book. There's lots of comments on the other side. And traps and triumphs of treading life as a man, and between saints and sinners. You and I have already talked about how you came up with that title, but I'd love to hear, so the audience knows, how did you come up with that title and what motivated you to write this book?
Yes, and before that, the few lines you read is out of a 2-pager or so that I wrote for my father, actually, for Father's Day. And I started writing, and then I realized that I was writing about fathers in general also, but starting from him and then just talking about how fathers in general, a lot of sacrifices that don't get acknowledged or recognized, or one needs to kind of appreciate these things that in society we have not done enough. About the title, Between Saints and Sinners, it relates, I think in the introduction, I mentioned once talking to my supervisor in California when I had just started freshly out of clinical psychology school in California, and then starting this work with men's groups. And I said, well, there were something about violent men. I mentioned how many we have in the group and the violent men. And he said, men with violence issues. And I said, yes. And then I mentioned violent men again. And he said, men with violence issues. And I said, what's the difference? And then over the years, he explained to me the difference. And I realized that when we condemn people as these are the perpetrators and these are the good men and those bad men, the fact is that growing up in a system, if certain patterns of power, of whatever, we can talk about patriarchy more, but if there are certain patterns, we all inherit the basic seeds of that in our lives. And it's very easy to say those bad men who are violent and who perpetrate crimes and who try to dominate women and who but the fact is we should not be separating that. Within us, all of us have the seeds for the worst behaviors, and all of us have seeds for the most amazing sacrifices and amazing lives that we live in service of others and in the service of the larger society, that many societies that we have created, amazing. Those grew out of these values also. So I don't like separating bad men and good men and fallen men and the angels and the devils and all. We need to recognize that within us we carry the basics of all of these. And we need to recognize that, one, so we don't fall into that trap of I'm above those things, and also so that we don't see those who have certain issues in their lives, that we don't condemn them too harshly and we don't judge them too harshly. Those elements of their lives they need to work on, and they may have totally failed in those, but then there are so many other dimensions to a human being. and we need to stay so softer in judging others, and more closer eye on ourselves. None of us are beyond these things. So the evil that lurks within us all, and if we are able to rise to angelic heights, all of us carry that within. uh, anyway, that's you know
You made a very good point that's something that's brought out that I discovered many years ago, that to call a boy or a man bad because he did a bad thing doesn't mean he's bad. He just did a bad thing. And if he fails at a project, that doesn't mean he's a lifetime failure. He just failed at that. So I agree with you, is being more gentle and caring with people, because how they feel about themselves will determine how fast they get through something. I've found it interesting. The pages I documented from the book and what I found on the digital are different pages. So on page 10, though, there was a client named Tom that would not open up and quite enough in the weekly group that you were hosting, and you were told that you're too proper and too together. Can you elaborate on a little bit of that and the essential part of that, what that means? Because I think that's an important point to bring out.
it's related, and it's also related to the point I was making that uh, we get into this place of judgment and the right things and the righteous stance, and then those people out there who just are again fallen and all. um, uh, and I was seeing myself as the helper, the service provider, and someone who was all together and not in touch with the weaker sides, with the softer sides, with the hurt, with the injuries within myself. And until you do that, until you get in touch with that human side, with all the weaknesses, and in touch with your own tears, and in touch with your own wounding, and we all carry wounds inside. Until you get in touch, it's just almost not fair to ask someone else to uncover themselves, to open up to you. Me sitting as a contained altogether therapist, and them, revealing themselves. Not that I need to share my issues, but something shifts when you're in touch with your own wounding and your own hurt and your own anger and your own failures in life, and we all carry those things. It's a different feel, and the other person can feel that. You don't have to say anything, you don't have to share your stories, but the quality of the exchange shifts when you're coming from a place of being in touch with those things. And in those days I used to be kind of this cocky know-it-all, having memorized all the psychology theories and all. And it took me a while to come down from that high horse and kind of just connect with people on a different level. And only when I did I fully realize the wisdom in what my supervisor was telling me at that time of, uh, you know, do you think you're worthy of that he would open up to you? And I didn't know at that time, what the hell is he talking about? Of course, I have all A's in my courses. I'm worthy. Look, my degree says so.
Well,
So,
you've gone through your own share of trauma and suffering that is worthy of sharing when you're humble about it, to help people connect with you, that they can identify you as someone that is not just a survivor but a thriver, and you've overcome and conquered. And so I can understand completely where would have been told that you're too proper, but once you come down from the high horse, like you say, and humble yourself and identify with someone that's struggling with issues, whatever it might be, and say, I've been there, done that, I've overcome, so I'm able to help you because I've overcome. But if you act like you know it all and you've ever had problems, how could you make a connection? So can you elaborate a little bit? I've got about 18 pages of notes here. There's no way we're going to get through them all. So I'm going to be skimming through, or we'll need another 8 hours today. And I know you're at a different time zone, aren't you? What time is it
yes,
there now? We're 11:19 a.m.
it's 8:19 p.m.
Yeah, we don't want to miss your beauty sleep. So we want so I on page 13, if I understand her correctly, there was a suicide bombing happened.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
you were involved with that? To elaborate a little
Uh,
bit.
yeah, a lot of traumatic things. So part of these 18 years with the United Nations was dealing with trauma and uh, being where the standard message used to be bombing in Kabul, cancel all missions, no unnecessary travel, send Dr. Kamran in. So it was going where the crises were unfolding, and whether it was natural disasters or wars and bombings and all. But then this particular one that you just mentioned also included an office that I had worked with for many years. So I had all the friends there, and then it was rolling over and kind of seeing the dead bodies and carrying them out and not recognizing faces. And then that was while it was happening and in the middle of the action. But then also, so most of the people I lost were either acquaintances or close friends. But then dealing with the rest of the staff in terms of debriefings, and then the families of staff. And then so I was sharing some of the things of how the mother of these are kind of open things now, but one of the staff members asked me, how did it come to this? This was a religion-based bombing from religious extremists in the office, and she didn't cry. She looked at me straight in the eyes. The wife was crying, asking questions, how to tell the children, etc., etc. And there are a lot of details that I'm skipping, which just makes this case really heartbreaking. But the mother asked, "How did it come to this?" And I just it's you don't know what to do with your emotion, because this was happening in Pakistan, in a country where I felt like I came from California after finishing 12 years of studies specifically to deal with religion and religious tolerance issues in Pakistan, not to do psychology, not to work for the United Nations, etc. This was my life's calling. This was this was what I was supposed to devote my life to. And I knew that we had turned away from issues that we saw growing in our midst, of religiosity, of fundamentalism, of extremism, and did not do our role. A lot of us, organizations, individuals, governments, we did not do what we should have done way back then. And I knew how it had come to that, because we turned the other way. We closed our eyes, and I felt the guilt, the weight of that question. The mother of the friend, close friend, he was not from Pakistan, so one feels the burden of that responsibility, because on some level, the one who does it is responsible, but I feel everyone who quietly watches these things grow and go from bad to worse to even lower and lower and lower, and we are not doing all that we can do, or we go quiet, or we turn the other way, or it's too difficult a conversation to start, or we don't want to hurt someone's feelings, so let's not talk about religion, or a lot of these issues that we don't want to hurt people's emotions and feelings, and don't want to offend anyone, so let's not talk about hard topics. We went quiet, we turned the other way, and things got this bad. And just the weight of feeling that responsibility, of how bad things have gotten in some parts of the world.
I read a few different incidences where on page 13, left Pakistan, you felt like a failure. You had an incident with your son where your son said you were self absorbed and anger flared up, and you were misunderstood by women when you kept using the word love, and she was offended. You withdrew into yourself. You had anger, disappointment in yourself. And there's a saying, you've been told that even as a chain, you're as weak as your weakest link. So I just wanted to elaborate in that. The reason I'm bringing that up, when you're in a position to counsel and guide and facilitate groups, like you said, you got off your high horse, realized you had some issues yourself to deal with, And once you're in a position to overcome those, you're in a very strong position to be able to help others. If you're still stuck, then how can you? And I admire, respect the examples you put in the book about those particular issues, because a lot of men suffer from those and they're not willing and humble enough to admit them. They'd rather keep them inside and act like they've got it all together and they have no regrets and everything's been a smooth sailing, which is such a big lie. There's no smooth sailing anywhere in the world. We can joke about it, certain parts that's smooth, but there's going to be issues everywhere. So the second half of our conversation, I'd like to discuss how you've been able to overcome some of those things to give hope and encouragement, inspiration to other men that are still struggling with those issues. But I did talk to you briefly before when we spoke about feminism and masculinity. And your book is so appropriately timed, because I turn on the news, I turn on a video, and every second video talks about gender issues, talks about masculinity, talks about feminism, talks about there's more than two genders now. How many genders are there? There's this going on, that going in about gender. There's so much confusion and antagonism and anger about it. So, and your book details that there's so much difference in definition of masculinity and role models, gender definitions in North America versus Asia. So elaborate a little bit on that, rather than getting on a controversial discussion, because there's people say there's toxic masculinity. Well, then there must be toxic femininity too. Is it only the men that are at fault? So help us a little bit understand some of those things.
Because I've been part of feminist meetings and all, not centrally, but I used to attend meetings and go to gatherings where strategies were discussed, etc. In California. My supervisor used to take me along. My sister is a very strong feminist, so I used to go with her in Minnesota and then after that in California. And so let me just start with this. Interesting, because I would sit with this group of feminists, and I would consider myself part of that group because I believed in the cause and all, working with the battered women alternative and all. And there was almost a tangible feeling of being pushed out of, like, and sometimes whispers here and there, what is he doing here? Because many times I would be the only man in the group. And what is he doing here? So who invited him? So who is he? Kind of a thing. No, many other people don't know each other, but it's a question of so who is he? What is he? Who is he with? It was a feeling of being pushed out, and that this wave, that wave of feminism, we can talk all, but there is an underlying, or there used to be, this feeling of women against men kind of a thing. Now, interestingly, when I moved to Pakistan, this was back in early 90s, 93 or so, the feeling was very different there. I think they had the fingers on the real core issues much better than in the Eurocentric feminist circles that I had experienced. It was about men and women transforming the way they interact with each other, the way they do the power relations, but in a way that both of them need to transform and both of them need to work together to change the overall society. We have women who believe in conservative values and retaining these rigid definitions, and we have men who have traditional values. And you have women who want to say, let's give more choices to people. Let's be softer in our definitions. And then there are men who are saying, let's be. So I really liked what I saw in Pakistan, men and women always working together. We had a few groups, but they were on the fringe and on the periphery that were like angry, hate all men. Why do we need them? Let's not talk about men. For the most part, it was men and women working together. The difference was that we were working together to make things better in the society, but our focus remained on helping women somehow too. And now I feel it's high time. A lot of people have written and are talking about these things in, again, whether you call it West or Eurocentric world or whatever. In Pakistan, there was not as much dialogue. In Asia, there have been groups Shivam has been part of and initiating these things. But there are groups, but I felt we needed to consolidate a lot of experiences of men and put a strong case for why men need to work on it to make things better for women, but also to make things better for themselves. Ultimately, when you have healthier relationships together, men and women, the lives of both men and women get enriched and the relationships get healthier for both and for the children that they raise. So we do it for others, we do it for ourselves first. And then the others get the benefits of that in any case. And that for me is the way I see the challenge for men working on their issues. It's to improve things for themselves and for others. Now, how I see feminism and how why I say I'm a feminist has a different definition. If you want me to take 1 or 2 minutes to explain that,
Hmm.
or if you have other questions, we can move on.
Yeah, I'd like you to explain that as well. You had another term in your book called patriarchy. Can
Mhm.
you explain that and perhaps the differences that you discovered from Pakistan to uh, North America when you were there, the differences, how men and women interacted as well?
Yeah. So patriarchy. So the basic definition, and in some countries we have moved to a place where really a lot of these issues are being acknowledged, looked at, worked with, dealt with. Like in the Scandinavian countries and all, we have gone a long way. But there are parts of the world where we are very far behind, where we do need to really, really acknowledge the basics and of the power differential, where um, violence cannot only be socially justified, but sometimes legally justified and religiously justified, and sometimes um, grotesque level of violence can sometimes be condoned and allowed. And we accept this as well. This is natural. This is how things are legally also. So a long way to go. These are the power differentials between what we between women and men. How I see myself as a feminist beyond having worked on these issues for what 30 plus years. There is something about the way, like Jung talks about the anima, the what he calls the feminine, inner feminine, or the feminine elements within the male psyche. I feel whether it's in the society that you bring up the value of, it's not just about women. It's about what we term as, or what we see, or what we associate with the women, the feminine elements. I think men and women both are born with it, but we associate that with women and then we repress them. And men need to connect with. We have been told to, it's been hammered out of us to not be emotional and to do the things that where you risk your life and all, and not to get too close in these emotional heart level relationships and communications. We need to open up to, now we may be getting into solutions also, but this is how I see my role and my task for my personal self and in the society, to bring up the value of those things which we repressed in individuals and in the society as feminine, starting from men crying, etc., that's been talked about and movies made about enough. But there are very subtle things about opening up on a heart level, about sharing intimacy, about having that closeness in our relationships, of saying no to certain careers if it means sacrificing our close relationships. In my life, in the lives of men around, I've seen how they constantly give up on these precious relationships and moments in life in favor of earning a better wage and bringing in what they feel is their only primary role, to be the provider. Whether it's what they are studying, or what kind of jobs they are doing, or where they are doing these jobs, or what level of danger they are taking on quietly without demanding anything, because my goal is to do whatever I need to do to get the maximum back to my family. we need to invest more in the relationships, in the communication, in opening up on a heart level, on our own emotions. That would make our own lives much richer, safer, richer, and make the lives of those around us, those who relate to us, those who share our lives, much richer. Not in money, perhaps as much, but on all other levels.
Well, I
That's a
appreciate
feminist.
your comment. I can tell we could have another 3-hour discussion just on that
We can have a
alone.
long one.
And thank God we don't have other people voicing their opinions. It'd be quite, I can tell, a heated discussion. So I'm going to take a break now for a couple of minutes just to review a couple of more things about what's going on with us. And
Sure.
we have our open up show on Sundays from 10 to 12. Participants from different industries join and share their life journey. So I invite you to join in from our audience worldwide. And if you feel that you have a conversation about your life you'd like to share, feel free to contact us. We'd love to hear from you. And we also have a Tamil live talk show on Sundays at 8 a.m. as well. We have a monthly webinar first Saturday every month at 10:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. So we bring expertise, organizations discuss a particular topic each time. We have a monthly special show, The Unspoken Tears, the second Saturday of every month from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. The focus is domestic violence against men, bullying, male sexual abuse, traumas, porn addiction, human trafficking, and Author Circle. I remind you again, every third Saturday from 11 a.m. to 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. All of our shows are available on 6 platforms, including iPhone, Google Play, and we have a monthly men's group for men by men every 2 weeks on Tuesdays from 6 to 7:30 through Zoom. And I encourage you to join in. It's a great opportunity to make friends, talk to other men about things that you would normally not talk to anyone. Passes Talking Stick, Indigenous peer-to-peer support group, fourth Friday every month from 6 to 7 through Zoom. There are no limitations of gender, age, nationality, or ethnic groups. All walks of life can participate in any of our shows. If you want to be a guest in any of our shows or willing to be part of our organization, help us directly, indirectly, please reach out to us. We love to work with individuals, professionals, experts, community organizations, associations, corporations, government officials, and businesses. Our phone number is 437 889 8329. Email address is info at voiceofmen360.org. Our website, voiceofmen360.org. We're on Facebook as well. You can join in Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter, YouTube, TikTok. So please subscribe. We'd love to have some more people involved. And if we have the poster for upcoming International Men's Day, that would be good to show. So we've got some great things happening. And I encourage you to consider, if you have a talent or skill you'd like to share or to join in celebrating International Men's Day. We're going to be doing it all week long from November 13th to 19th. The official day of International Men's Day is November 19th. This is worldwide. And then what surprises many of the audience, because you think there's only Women's Day, but we thought it's about time we have a Men's Day. It's going to be the third global observance. I myself are going to be hosting the last day of comedy show. Do we have the poster for that one? Yeah, we're looking for it. So if you have a talent or skill when it comes to humor or comedy, feel free to reach out to us. We can see if we can get you in the show as well. We're going to have a fun time. So is Dr. Kamran back? There's the poster on that. So feel free to reach out to us. We'd love to have some more comedians in the house. So that's the first time. We're going to have it regularly. So Dr. Kamran, join back in and we'll resume our conversation. I
Yes.
like the last part of the book, that you had an afterword, that you basically revisited key messages in the book, number 1, and afterward 2, with what can we do about it. I just wanted to bring up, I like the part in the book where you mentioned previously bringing Dr. Kamran Ahmad to help as like the superhero coming in. Why did they have you come in? What qualities or talents and skills that merited bringing you in like a superhero?
Yeah, not the. It was more dealing with the fallout of these loss and crises and traumas. So psychological support was the primary task, and then managing relationships within the offices after a traumatic event, because everything gets strained between managers and staff, between staff and staff, between different groupings within staff. There are all kinds of axes along which any group can be divided, and these get really strained in times of crisis and trauma. So my task used to be to help groups with their dynamics, but also for individuals to be able to talk about the trauma and how it was impacting them, and making sure that we can somehow diffuse and minimize the impact that the trauma had on them. So that was the primary role: individuals and then group dynamics.
Before we proceed, I don't want to ignore anyone. We have some comments, a fair amount of them. A surprise, I just was told. So we have Shoaib Kahut, fingers crossed, waiting in China. I don't know what that means.
Okay.
And then men need the same emotional care that society gives to women. Feminism does not discuss masculinity in an equitable way. Yes, there is toxic femininity that society does not want to admit. And women do get more help than, I think she should have said men, by virtue of the social construction gender. It's important to address men's issues to make it better, not just for women, but for themselves, as Dr. Ahmad said. And we're Comedy Joe. Are you able to see your comments? Yes, I'm seeing them. Okay. So,
Good.
yeah, so
Yes, very much.
there's several other things that you brought up. In other countries, Scandinavian countries, men's roles are involved in science, technology, engineering, women, medical doctors, nurses. So there's a difference here. And you said
Yes.
husbands and wives also pay a price for not recognizing they have a choice in how they divide their responsibilities within their family. So I think it would be wise to discuss some of the different gender roles in different countries that you've discovered, because some people think that it's all the same in the world. And then they go, it's called culture shock, to Pakistan or India. I've been there and see a massive difference in
Yes.
how the world is operating within the family and within business, personal. It's a shock
Yes.
unless you're prepared. And
Yeah.
you've had the opportunity to be in different countries. You've been in Dubai, you've been in California, you've been in Pakistan, Sri Lanka. You've been in
Based in
different
Italy,
areas.
Thailand, Sri Lanka, other places, but then worked in more than 60 countries where I would go in and out for missions in providing support and relief. So you do get to see different cultures, and when we say it's the same all over, it's not. As I said, in like I was in and out of Sweden quite a lot, other Scandinavian countries, where things have just gone so far. They have progressed very far in trying to reach a level where you're not pushed into, choices are not made for you. And actually what emerges is quite interesting, given that there is no one pressurizing you to go into this or that profession. So that's another discussion, very fascinating. Jordan Peterson talks about that a lot also, which is quite interesting observations. um, but then so two sides to that. To some extent, as opposed to what you were saying, I was shocked at times. So I would be sitting talking to a man in Pakistan. This is back in 93, after having come back, finishing my 12 years of studies in the US, and I came back to Pakistan. And I would be sitting across talking to a man, and he would start talking about, how about the woman that he had abused in a certain way, or justifying his actions in a certain way. And it was amazing how I would feel like I know you. I've sat with you before, way out there in California. I've heard it was like a translation of exactly the same phrases, same sentences. So some of the patterns do go across cultures. where
Mm-hmm.
patriarchy is that you do have similar kinds of patterns.
Mm-hmm.
But then, in addition, you have what you have in the West is that the institutions, the systemic discrimination has been challenged, it has been acknowledged, it has been seen, and it has been countered for the most part. It's amazing how far they have gone. And sometimes when people go on complaining over there, I say, God, do you know what the rest of the world is living with? Do you know what you have achieved? Please make it better, but also celebrate what you have here. It's amazing how far you have come. Because on the level of systems, if there is any discrimination, it's everyone is almost like afraid, like overly afraid to go to take a wrong step, etc. Which is good. Everyone is very cautious. You don't cross lines and all. But then there are parts of the world where, on an institutional level, in terms of shelters, in terms of police response, in terms of lawyers, the sensitivity of the system, in terms of religion and what that promotes, we have just such a huge, long way to go. The challenges are so huge because it's seen as justified, not just the discrimination, violence and all justified, accepted, not just allowed, but sometimes even pushed in tribal settings where men are pushed to avenge their honor and respect of the family and the clan and go out and do these things and sometimes to the extent of gang rapes and all. So where local judicial council would kind of give verdict to carry these things out equally to the women of the other. Horrible, horrible things. So on a systemic level, from institutions that are supposed to provide services to laws to we have a long way to go in some parts of the world, and in some parts of the world I see that we already have gone a long way and we have achieved quite remarkable results, and there is not as much discrimination I feel as I see people complaining on and on. And sometimes I think, oh, I'm going to touch on something and then I'll move on unless you want me to stay with that. I think one can get hooked on the victim thing also. It's a very now I don't want to get into the psychological part of it. I can talk for an hour. But
Mm-hmm.
it's very tempting to get caught up in being a victim, and
Mm-hmm.
that's not a healthy place for anyone to be caught up in, and that's a very dangerous attractive thing to say, look what they've done. Of course this is what they've done to me, this is what patriarchy has done to me, this is what men have done to me. Of course, what do you expect? Because of my skin color, because of my gender, because of whatever. But there's a very tempting attraction in being the victim, and there's a lot of power in being the victim. I
Yeah,
won't get
it's
into
quite a
details
bit
of
different in different parts of the world. You made a comment as well in, I'm not sure what country it was, if it's Pakistan. If a man slaps his wife, it's called domestic violence. And if a couple is hugging and kissing in a park, that's called indecency. But if you see the same thing in Central Park in New York, a couple hugging and kissing, people would just walk by and smile. But if a
yes,
man abused a woman in the public, what would happen to him? He'd be arrested and put in jail. So
yes,
look at the differences there as an example. Or if a man goes to Saudi Arabia or Dubai and
mhm,
chooses to get involved with a woman in a very intimate way, what can happen to him versus what happens
yes.
here?
So in different contexts. So I talk about. I think I do 3 chapters on violence, but then this was in the context of I think romance and sexuality, and I have like 6, 7 chapters on that because sexuality I think is a huge area in any society. Certainly, some much more than others that we need to open up and very much so in some societies than compared to others, but that we need to own and open up to and see the negatives and the positives and see what certain religious and more um, patriarchal traditions have done to us, the flesh being bad, the world being bad, heaven's good, spirit good, flesh bad, those kinds of things, that this is somehow evil, dirty, women body, human body, sexuality,
Yes,
heart connections
it's a
along
very
those
strong
lines.
urge, stronger than food or water. I'd love to
And
hear for the short time we have left,
yes.
what you've gone through. It's 230 pages. We need a few more hours, so it's a challenge for me deciphering what should I talk about next. But I'd like to focus on what are the solutions in the afterward, the second part. You talked a lot about that, but you can define or work on what are you doing right now to help men in Pakistan and the future work? How are you helping men in Pakistan? And even from your past work, how are you helping other men?
Yeah, so I'm based in Canada, but I have like one leg in Pakistan because the issues here are so close to the heart that I can't help but every few months then I jump back here for a few months in Pakistan. So between Canada and Pakistan, but so the struggle, and we work with groups, and now we are going to be starting to work with like larger, offering things to a much larger audience, larger circles, but in support groups and trainings, in ways to allow men to open up, as I said, to the more what we termed as feminine and then not okay for men. So opening up to those things, including not just emotions and relationships and the softer skills and communication and heart level things, but also creativity, and so bringing poetry, art, music, dance, those kinds of things, music, to bring that softness, that moisture in our lives. So that's on an individual level. Then on a systemic level, we need different kinds of laws, different kinds of institutions that can support women and men to kind of open up to a more to fair, to more just societies and systems. So there are many things that we can do on a systemic level, many things that we can do on a personal level. In the book, the last, I think, 10, 12 pages or something, I just give personal, collective interventions and things that we can do. Where do we go from here? What can we do in our personal lives? What can we do in our collective lives? So as you said, time is short, and there are many, many chapters covering different things. Buy the book, get the book, it's on Amazon. But I wanted to spend time and a few pages on specifically what are the things that men can do, and
Yes.
not just to contain what is negative, like anger management, like issues with violence, but also to open up the more positive things, to have a healthier relationship with romance, to have a healthier relationship with their sexuality, to own it with pride, with pleasure. And then on a systemic level, similar kinds of things, and what can we do to facilitate that? But these are the challenges for us, and many more.
Yes, on page 211, you provide some detail about that. I don't want to ignore the comments. We've got some interesting comments. Society from Camille has spent decades on female victimhood and little on effective strategies that actually work for both genders in equitable ways. She worded that well. And we have to work on the systemic level. Looking at each level is a ecological approach. She's definitely using doctor's words. I don't even know what that means, ecological.
Mhm.
So, human sexuality, Alan Millard said, is the key to understanding rather than condemning, which has been done and continues to be done to men. People disregard the strength of that urge. And so that's why it gets a lot of men and women in trouble. This is sexuality. So you've devoted a
I
fair amount of time to it, and that's appropriate because too much
Yes.
it's hushed and oh, she corrected, it's ecological. Okay. Now I understand what she meant. Okay. Well, you detailed several things in page 211, basically things that a lot of his business people already know. Take a paper and pencil or pen, do a short exercise, write down things that are typical of your gender that you enjoy. That makes sense. So, and this is an interesting how to speak up when someone likens a man to a woman in a derogatory way. It's insulting to women and damaging all around. So you had some interesting things there, especially vow to speak up when you hear mothers and sisters being used in curse words. It's ugly. Well, of course. But the key is having the courage to speak up when a woman is being verbally abused rather than allowing another man to do it. So that's the key is having confidence yourself. You speak up and protect someone that is mistreated. So, what other ideas could you bring up that would help men that are struggling with what's going on in the world with the gender confusion in many areas, and they're wondering how should a man act, especially like in my case, I was raised until 4 with a single mother. So
Hmm.
that's a basic example. How could you help men that are struggling, wondering, there's no male in my family of a woman, how am I supposed to act? And up until 4
Yes.
as an example.
Yeah. So again, um, being a clinical psychologist, I shy away from giving blanket statements, but because it shows up in such individual ways in each life. But generally, this is a journey of moving into wholeness. So we have certain parts of us that are hammered out of us, that are repressed, that we never had the space to develop. For each person to know what is my relationship with different aspects of my life.
Mm-hmm.
And as I said, creativity is one big one. My relationship with intimacy, my relationship with emotions, my relationship with heart connections, heart relationships, with talking about hard things with others, my expression within myself, whether it's in a form of a journal or poetry or whatever, and being able to talk to others about it, expressing it with others, what is happening within me, what is happening within the relationship, to be able to voice it, to express it, to articulate it. Am I able to do that or not? So just looking at oneself and moving towards wholeness. All these bits and pieces that either get lost along the way or get repressed along the way to move towards wholeness. Whole men and whole women can have healthy relationships with each other. Women who are wanting some man to hold her hand and carry her on a chariot and take care of her, um, and men who have a need to feel responsible and powerful in a relationship. Half men and half women create very unhealthy relationships. They fit together very nicely, but in very unhealthy relationships. Whole men in touch with their softer feminine sides, and whole women who know how to live an empowered life, who know how to take care of themselves, who do not need a man but want to share their lives with a man, not a need-based relationship but a want-based relationship. That is the ideal that we move towards. Women, whole men in healthy relationships with each
I
other.
agree. That's a very valid point.
Bring
And I can
wholeness.
see
Yeah.
we're getting an abundance.
Sorry, I keep interrupting. Bringing
Oh, good.
wholeness into our lives is what the struggle is.
I agree wholeheartedly. The reason I was interrupting is because we don't have a shortage of questions here. I can see we need probably to have you come back because I'm getting one question after another after another. I'm not even close to getting through my notes of 18 pages.
Oh, no.
So I need to verbalize these questions before we finish soon. What are some of the steps that we can do to break the stigmas and cultural barriers in Asian men from your experiences?
Sorry, to
And
break what?
okay, what are some of the ways/steps that we can do to break the stigmas and cultural barriers in Asian men from your experiences? And also talk about International Men's Day in Pakistan. So we got two things. If you finish those briefly, we're going to be done. So
Okay. International Men's Day. We these are good opportunities to bring up these things. So we are kind of considering and talking about that. But in any country, we need to kind of get together and bring up these things. In terms of the stigma and all, it's I think it's creating environments where, without judgment and without blame, we create environments where we openly share our hearts and our feelings and our experiences and open up. For that, it's important to have safe and non-judgmental kinds of places. I have noticed it's amazing. Men and women, you put them together in a group, and men start acting their, the roles that they have learned all their lives: being strong, being together, being on top of things, not falling apart. you get a group of men together by themselves, and it's magic. And you create a space, you initiate a few stories to kind of give permission and open that space for talking about on a heart level, and men get hooked to it. And they I've often had experiences where after 8 sessions, you have to close down the self-growth workshop or support group, and men don't want to give that up. They say, we've never had this opportunity to talk on this level with a group of other men, adult men, and the society doesn't provide these opportunities. So creating wherever we can these small units, whether it's in a relationship, allowing your husband to be able to cry and not freak out, and because how can you be crying? You are the source of strength. So from individual relationships to within friends, creating these environments to in smaller, perhaps more structured groups. But creating environments is very important where men start feeling comfortable to open up these injuries, this hurt, these emotions inside. Is just one can talk a lot more about these things from my experiences that have worked and that have failed.
Yes, you're making some very valid points. And you've got a good point that when men get together, I've been in many men's groups, it's a totally different situation than when a woman's involved. The whole dynamics are different. The men will guard their emotions, and the real man speaks when there's only men around, and he doesn't act like a macho man. He can be. And I got to mention this because I think this is very significant. On page 155, I think we'll end with this. A broken heart has the power to humanize a man. And please, I know we could talk for an hour on that sentence alone, but previous to that, you said when a boy is a child, he's able to cry, but taught by their fathers and mothers and others that it's not manly for them to express their intense emotions. So men hide emotions, repress them, and their lives become less than emotional. And then you put that comment, a broken heart has the power to humanize a man. Can you elaborate on that just very briefly? Because we have a limited time left. We could probably do a 10-page chapter on that line.
Yes, and I did a few chapters on that because romance and love is something that men need to really, really value and have in their lives to have open hearts. A broken heart, more than sitting together and love when it comes together. Broken hearts are just so powerful in opening us up to emotions. Women have many chances of doing that in their lives. They're allowed to. They're encouraged to open up to these softer emotions. Men, not as much. Heartbreaks and all are very powerful times, and how men handle that, not to escape that, but to sit with the pain, is very, very important. Whether it takes 6 months or a year to climb out of that, a lot of poets, Robert Bly and all, come to mind. But it's a very significant thing when it happens in the life of a man, when you're pulled down into deep emotions, and to honor that and to hold it with a lot of respect and value, because that is where your life gets enriched, and you open up to the softer, the emotional side of life. So I did a few chapters on romance and love and after sexuality. But we can certainly have longer conversations about many of these aspects, no?
Well, I agree. I'll wholeheartedly agree. I've learned through my own life, taking over 3 years to get through a heartbreak, the pain provided me intense power and revealed the purpose for my life. So, but if you run away from the pain through alcohol, drugs, and other things and hide it, then you're missing the whole blessing of it. There's power, and pain can be your friend. So we did put up a couple times the link for where people can obtain your book. Is there any other way that people can contact you, a website or any other method to reach out to you?
So Amazon is one, and then I do have some videos on ruminations with Kamran. So my name Kamran, ruminations with Kamran altogether on YouTube. So I put up some of the videos there also on different topics. My core issues in life have to do with religion and spirituality, so that certainly, and a few on masculinity, which are more in Urdu, more in Hindi, they would understand, but the book is there for English, so I felt I needed to do something for the regional South Asian languages there. So there are videos there, and people can
Mhm.
contact me through that
Is there an
also.
email address or a website address people can
Yes,
contact you as well?
yes. So should I spell it?
Go ahead.
Okay, it's Kamran.Leijay, Leijay, Kamran.Leijay@gmail.com.
Okay. And a
So
website? You
please
have a
feel free to
website as
write.
well, or just email? Okay.
Right.
Well, I greatly appreciate you being on today. And what happened? I get a phone call now. So we'll just ignore that. So it
All
never
right.
fails when you don't want people to call, they do. So thank you again. Thank you again. Let me just see if I can shut that off. Okay. Thank you again for coming today. It's been a true honor and pleasure. I like the intensity of your compassion and warmth to care about people and wanting to help. And we've already gone over time, but is there anything? Yes, you were asked about the email address. You just provided that. So, and the way to obtain the book. So I can see that there's quite a demand and excitement with all the comments we've made and the questions. We may need to bring you back for an encore. If this was a rock concert, there'd be at least 10,000 people clapping and you'd be coming back for another performance. So
Would love to, Joe. It
yeah.
would be nice to sit together, go deeper into some of the specific areas.
Well, when you come back to Canada, we'll definitely have to get together for lunch or breakfast or dinner or whatever. But please stay a few minutes longer. Stay yourself here 5 more minutes. And thanks again for the audience participation. It was a true joy. I think this is the most participation I've had with all these questions, so I had to get back. So, and I haven't even finished all my notes. Look at all my notes. I haven't even gotten through them all. So, so please buy the book. It's a great book. I found it quite enjoyable reading it. And there's the cover it for those you see. Since we're over time anyway, why did you make it red and why did you have pictures of your head like that? Can you just tell people? I hope it's a funny reason.
Just being caught between different sides of ourselves. So nothing dramatic about the red and black. It has nothing to do with devil worship or anything.
Well, that's good to hear. I'm happy to hear that. Okay. Well, thanks again for being our special guest today. It was a true wonderful conversation. And thanks for the audience participation as well. So stay tuned for our next upcoming show. And please participate in the International Men's Day coming up very soon next month. It's coming up very fast. So have a wonderful day today, everyone.
Thanks.